Today, we explore a deeply unsettling topic as my friend shares her painful experience with cyberbullying. From being stalked online to having her movements tracked and posted publicly, the extent of harassment is staggering. Join us as we hear her story after I hit this music. Joining me this week is community advocate Elizabeth Hankey. Elizabeth, thank you for coming on my podcast for the second time.
Yes, no, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, so I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a while now. As people may not know, we both ran for school board at the same time. And contrary to what people were saying online about me, that I knew you for years, and I've been going with you to school board meetings for like the past 5 or 6 years. I literally met you like last year, one morning, or I think it was the afternoon. I go check my Cato Karate email, and I had this weird message from somebody who I didn't know. I said, "Hey, I heard your podcast. Would it be," I can't remember how it said, "If you're watching on YouTube, I will post some screenshots for you. Would you be interested in running for school board?" And I was like, I can't remember what I said exactly, but I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll think about it." And from then on, I think it was back in February of last year, we became friends and we got to experience some cyberbullying together. So,
Yeah. And so, like, I've been pretty involved with this school for the Mankato Area Public School for the last 4 years, and in the 2022 election, I actually looked through the list of people who are running for school board, and I called them up, and I helped them as well. So a lot of the elected members, and current serving school board members that were elected in 2022, I helped community canvass for. And I
so
also had put
I'm curious. Hold
together.
on. I just want to pause you 1 minute. I'm just really curious because I might forget to ask this question. How'd you find my podcast and and, and why'd you email me?
Yeah, and then so this time around for the 2024 elections, I kinda did the same, but I was a little bit more proactive about also reaching out and letting people know that they could run for school board, and I think it was just through you had posted on one of the community sites one year, anti-bullying podcast, what the podcast I'm on
Okay.
currently, and I'm like, "Oh, this is really interesting that somebody is taking this much time to discuss the bullying in our school, safety and school measures. And if somebody is this passionate, perhaps they would consider running for school board." And I think at that time, too, you had said, I've never really thought about running for a political office before. I don't know what this entails. And I am very passionate about kids. Please tell me more.
Yeah, and
Is
my
that
my
what you
first
remember too?
response, yeah, but my first response, which I didn't share with you, is like, "Oh, crap, am I being called out? Because 'Cause I've been talking about schools should do this, do that for the past year, and now there's somebody calling me out, say, 'Hey, come and prove it.'" I was like, "Oh gosh, I knew this was gonna happen." So,
Yeah, and really, I want to encourage even people listening to this podcast, and then another reason that I agreed to do it is to run for office, whether what you're passionate about as students in a school board or city governance and budgets, that it just takes everyday people with a passion for their community to take a stand, right? You can't just be a social media warrior or on your podcast. Like, if you really truly believe in something, you have to, for society to move forward, you have to stand up for it as well, and try to get involved in political office.
okay. So, we're gonna fast forward now that you got me on board, right, for school board, I started campaigning back, I think it was March of 2024, and you didn't start anything until I think August when you signed up for it. And what a lot of people don't know, and I even had to tell some school board members who met with me during the campaign time because they all, they want to know who you are. And I said, I was actually one that told Elizabeth to run for school board because I don't know as much as she does about what's going on in our schools. Because my kids at that time, they went to private school. They went to Loyola, and then Rihanna actually went to Mankato East for her last couple of years, but she was at Loyola as well. So I had no clue what was fully going on in the public schools as you did. So I was kind of coming into this as a one, as the people would say, the one issue, you know, anti-bullying, we do need better policies and so on and so on. So I felt like, man, if I got on the school board, I don't know as much. So I started watching school. So I actually got caught up. I watched 4 years worth of school board meetings to catch up. So at least I could hold my own at the League of Women at the women thing. Cause I did know that there's going to be that little, what do you call that? Like, it wasn't a debate. It was just get to know you on certain issues. And I didn't want to be like, I don't know. So I
Yeah,
needed to
and even though
catch up myself.
your students, your own kids, your biological children were at least part-time over at the private schools. I mean, because you run a service Cato karate kinda geared more towards students, you actually have heard and saw this problem from kids at various schools. Our public schools, sometimes our private schools, sometimes not the local Mankato school, but some of the surrounding school
Yeah.
communities as
I
well.
knew the
So you were familiar with the
I knew the
issues.
bullying side of what was going on. I didn't know the academics. I didn't know the finances, which, good gosh, I remember we both met with one school board member, and I asked her that question, like, "Dude, how much of this do you really need to know?" And she was like, "You don't need to know finances that much. We have people that know that. So you just have to ask a lot of questions." So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't really know. I just knew about bullying. I needed policy. I knew about safety. So I had to go back and watch all these all these old school board meetings to get caught up, then I'm like, "Well, heck, Elizabeth, why don't you run for school board? Because you know this stuff way more than me." I mean, I have to go back and watch this stuff. You've already been keeping up with everything for the past how
Yeah.
many years?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'd watched the school board meetings. I'd also data requested the school if something was said at a school board meeting and was not clear, just to get more context as to what was being discussed. Because, of course, the school board members could be discussing, the teacher learning forms and they might fully be aware, but as a parent listening, you're like, what are they even talking about? And there's a lot of jargon. So
yeah.
if you know what the word means, perhaps you would understand it, but I ended up having to do a lot of data
The
requests to even understand what they're talking about.
I remember when I said yes to you that I would run for school board, you sent me a bunch of stuff, and one of them was the teacher learning forms. I think they were called PLCs. I was like, what the heck? So I went to my instructor, my employee, who was a school teacher in Mapleton. I go, "Hey, what's this term mean?" "Oh, we do these all the time." It's like, "Okay, what does this do? I don't know what this stuff does." Like, you sent me all this stuff up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a lot to know
There
here."
is so much to know. You're right.
It
There is so
is
much to know, and I'm learning all of the time. Yep.
it's crazy. But I still but the problem was I already told people I was gonna run for school board, even though it was overwhelming to learn all this other stuff. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna see it through at least." And everything was going good for me and you, I thought. August went really well. September, it went pretty good. I remember I went on a podcast that's local in Mankato called Get Deep Podcast, and I talked slightly about my experience for school board running. And at that time, I was so sick and tired of running because I ran since March that I told them this last month of October, I'm just gonna chill out because I said what I had to say, and I'm just gonna chill out because I'm actually just burnt out from campaigning. I can't believe that people do this as a career, like career politicians do this like
All
every
of the
2
time.
4 years.
All
Like
of the time.
I'm burnt out. And
But
then
before
one
all that, the
yeah,
current school board members endorsed
I was
wrote
getting
a
to that.
wrote a letter.
Yeah, so then I get this so then I see this letter pop up on social media, and to me, I even called this out in the League of Women. It was complete imbalance of power because you had the current school board at that time, recommend another candidate, which they've never done before. They've never wrote a letter before. They were so scared. I want to say mainly you. They're so scared of you that they had to write a letter to push another candidate through. which that letter started it was a snowball. It started off small. I felt like, we had people I saw people on both sides like, "Yay, I'm so glad you sent this out." And people are like laughing at the board for putting this out. Saw both sides of it, which at that day I was kind of upset about it, but then I got over it the next day because who cares? But it
It's
started
politics.
as as politics. And I even talked about it on the Get Deep podcast. Like, whatever. I mean, it wasn't at first I thought it was a big deal, but then after a while it wasn't. Like, yeah, it's already forgotten about. Move on. Until one day I sat at my computer and I saw this Facebook post about you. And I call you up, say, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And let's start with your cyberbullying experience. Um, what happened?
Yeah. So, a little background history about me is my family has hosted exchange students from all over the world. And that was the one reason I was really um, concerned about schools, is because I also have experience hosting students from Spain and Mexico and Germany and Azerbaijan and Ethiopia, Norway and China and Japan. And so I have all these kids coming into my home and interacting with my own children. And they speak multiple languages, they do advanced math. And of course, they're coming from homes that encourage education as well. So it's not just the country's education, but also their lifestyles that their parents encourage. But it is also the countries that they are coming from. And so that was one of the first reasons that got me involved in education, and like, why are our students so far behind students in Europe or even some of the students in Mexico, and asking those questions. But also because I share my home with people from many different cultures, many different religions. I feel very strongly about the sacrifices that so many people in history have made for us and our culture, that allows me to share my home. Of course, one being, Dr. Martin Luther King. And so shortly after COVID, our district, and they don't do this practice anymore. We're speaking of May of 2025. But shortly after COVID, our school had in had hosted during school hours meetings for students and teachers of color, with the idea that people of color need a safe space to discuss their experiences. And although I understand the intention is good, they want to create a space for people to feel safe. Of clearly, from my view, our experiences aren't defined by the color of our skin, and it is such a slippery slope to take, dividing students. And it may start out as it did, harmless, right? We just want people who have maybe faced racism in the past to have a space to come together and not feel that racism. But when I share my house with students from Ethiopia and Mexico and Azerbaijan, I feel that it is our common humanity and experiences that bring us together. And we all face problems, and they might be a variety of different problems. And it is finding that common humanity and that commonality between those problems, and it's listening what you've experienced, how you've overcome those problems, what I face and how I've overcome those problems, that bring us together. So of course I was very much against this practice of dividing students and teachers
So
and
I'm
offering them
not
this opportunity. I guess their argument would be that they don't have to go to these meetings, right? It was something that they could opt into. But the school made a Facebook post initially saying that this was being offered as an opportunity for students to feel safe.
So I wanna back up. I'm not familiar with these groups. Um, so could my kids join these groups if they wanna hear about their peers' experiences, maybe that they're more self-aware of how they're feeling, would my daughter been allowed to go to these meetings just so she could understand what other people are feeling?
If your student was not a person of color, she would not have been invited to join the meeting.
Really?
And I think there is some confusion out there too about, I mean, we all have a free right to gather, and and in a way that we want. My name's Elizabeth. I know a lot of other Elizabeths. So if I wanted to have after work, if I wanted to have all the Elizabeths over to my house, that is legal and welcome, and maybe a little bit funny. And Tim is also kind of a common name. Maybe you can have a Tim party.
Tim party. Good gosh.
And I think there has been people that have common names that do bring all the people with their same name together. And it's all in good fun. But the
Now,
problem with this is
yeah.
that we're having it during a school day, during government time and government resources, versus, if somebody wanted to have this party in their house after school, of course, you're free to associate with whoever you want. Now, I may not encourage it, but that is all well and good. I think that the leap is when we're having this, and this was over lunch hour during the school day, and we're seeing our government schools and our government money pushing a narrative that to some is like, well, we're supporting people, but to others, like myself, I see this as steps in dividing people, or in the way I was interpreting the message, is that people who look different need a safe space away from everybody else. And again, I just thought that was a very potentially dangerous message to be giving our
Yeah, there
kids.
there are groups though that are only for at least the groups I know of, like say you experience abuse, which you don't want everybody to know how you feel. So you go to groups that are only for people that has experienced abuse so you guys can come together, kind of unload in a safe way. Were these groups for kids who maybe were just experiencing straight up racism and they needed that space to unload? Was that kind of how this group was presented? Like,
Was
hey, if you're being harassed, you're being targeted at school based off your race, we have a group for you to come and talk. Was that how it was being presented? Because that would make sense if it's being presented that way. I just don't know. Was that how it was being presented, or was it just like, I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
so
know this
I
topic
imagine that is the
as well.
intention, right? That was the assumption and the intention of the people who formed the group, from my understanding, because even white students can suffer under racism. And we actually had a parent come to the school board, and not during my time on the board, prior to my time on the board, who had mentioned that his daughter, they were of Norwegian heritage, and they actually like studied their heritage, and she wore braids in her hair like some of the Vikings, and she was being harassed by students saying that she was culturally appropriating, or the students did say culturally appropriating. I'm using that term because I know the words, but essentially saying that she's culturally appropriating other people's culture. And her dad's like, no, this is part of the Viking culture. The Vikings wore the braids, and they're different than dreadlocks. And this is part of our culture. But my daughter is being harassed in school, and in my interpretation, that could potentially be considered racial discrimination, being teased for the style she was wearing her hair. But it wouldn't be open, that wouldn't have been open to her, because it was only open to people of color. And as an argument to the people, some of the administration at that time, I know I also had family members who do foster care. And I said, hey, if you had a group that was for students who were being abused, because we hear these stories all the time about junior high students and even younger who experience sexual abuse, physical violence, oftentimes from family members. Um, you know, all these kids, if we had a group for foster care students who kind of miss their family, don't get to see, don't have that stability in their life, I would fully support that, because foster care isn't black, white, orange, brown. It There's kids from all over this city experiencing pain that's unimaginable. And race doesn't discriminate when it comes to violence within these homes. So that is one thing I express. Like, if we had spaces, safe spaces for foster care kids to voice what they have experienced, I would be all for that. I am just not for dividing students by, um, artificial hair or skin or any of those qualities.
So, how did these groups affect your campaign?
So, from my knowledge, and it becomes tricky because I own a business as well, and my business social media accounts got hacked and deleted, which also ended up deleting all of my personal accounts. And that happened because you have a credit card number attached, or at least at the time, this happened a couple years ago. It had a credit card number attached and they stole things. And without my personal accounts attached to it, they could just run, because it takes a really long time to call into the social media company, say, hey, someone's charging my account. You need to stop this, hold your credit card information, cancel my PayPal that was also attached. And so I wasn't able to save my social media account. So my personal social media accounts, I was able to save my business account eventually, but I was not able to save my personal accounts. Those were gone. The Facebook was not willing to put the time into, Meta was not putting willing to put the time into saving them. So when I ran for public office a year after my accounts had all been deleted, as you mentioned, there was this social media uproar because it had, and from what I remember, I made the comment to the school social media post about how students need this space to feel safe. And I had said something to the, made the comment something to the effect of, like, well, what color does my skin have to be for your students to feel safe around me? And that was made as then the headline, as if I shared it on my Facebook page, which I honestly don't remember doing. And also, the newspaper ran a story. It was like a page and a half story about it. And I had asked them too, like, I am really sorry. Can you show me where you're getting this information from? Because I just simply don't have it. It has been like over a year ago. And I had a campaign manager uh, from a group called Good Party. And so he was also, and he was down in Florida, and I'm here in Minnesota. So for people who don't realize where Mankato is, we're in Minnesota, and my campaign manager through Good Party was in Florida. And so I'm sharing him my conversation back and forth with the Mankato Free Press. And, a lot of people in town said, don't even talk to them. And I'm like, well, we have to talk to people.
Don't talk to who?
Don't
The
talk to
good
the Free
party?
Press.
Okay.
And I just kind of felt like I don't want to live in a world where we can't trust one another. And even
Yeah.
though I have those feelings, I was just going to take the risk and talk to them anyway. And my campaign manager's in the background, and he's a little, concerned for me. And he's also seeing that this social media post being reshared, and then people calling me a racist, and follow, and I think you shared posts with me, and other friends shared posts with me, like, oh, people are following you, they're saying when you leave your house, when you go to your business, they're calling your kids names, they're trying to cancel your.
All right, Elizabeth, before we get too far into this story, I want to know, how your cyberbullying started from the beginning, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the post that I was talking about where the school had mentioned that they were having and this, was back just right after COVID. So this was a long time ago and back in history. This school, the post that the school had shared and that I had made a comment under was made to look like I shared it with the comment on top. And from my understanding and my recollection and memory of the time, and it was posted on a mom's group, and it had started to go viral, and people were making nasty comments and saying she's a racist. And I do a lot of community canvassing and door knocking and just kind of getting a feel for our community, and something I've loved to do. So I'm like, well, I'm going to get offline and out of this fake world, and I'm going to go into the real world and canvas. And I have canvassing tool that has everyone's name of the doors that I'm going up to. But what I had marked off to canvas um, was short one block of being a dead end. And so I went up the extra block because I'm like, well, even though I don't know who's living here, I'm still going to go up the block because I just want to finish this road. And
Mhm.
so I didn't stop at everybody's address. But then one of the addresses I didn't even stop at. I was just walking by. Someone comes running out of the house at me. And then with a camera in hand and with, my post, and wanted me to say out loud, that um, evidently people of color don't feel safe around white people or something, without having the full context of what the school had previously shared. She just wanted me to say that. And she was running after me, saying, you need to say this. This is what you've already said. You need to say it on camera. And so I just did a flip and started walking away. I didn't say anything. And of course, as she shared it and other people are sharing it, news gets a hold of it. American Experiment was a group that got a hold of it. And then they wrote an article on the incident, and they shared it with their community. And then, of course, now we have politics.
Okay. So when which went viral, the video or the because I didn't even know there was stuff before. Backing up, I thought it was the video that went viral. I didn't realize there was something before that because you didn't say anything to me that of what was going on. I didn't know anything until I saw that video.
Well,
Because
I
it kind
try
of
to stay offline because
yeah.
it
So
was so
what?
I think that you were yeah, no, I had kind of see it. I don't know if it had gone, I would say viral, but it was posted in a mom's group and some people were making nasty comments. And it didn't go super viral until after I was chased down with a camera, and then American Experiment did a story on it. And then it was like we all in these moments we all lose our humanity, right? Because it wasn't like, oh, she is a business owner and a parent, and I donate almost as many games at my business as I make in a year. Like, I give a lot of time and money to this community. But it was no longer about a message. It's no longer about what I do or what I can do. It became like this group against this group. And everyone lost their humanity in this time, right? It's like a get even thing. Like this group, I'm against this group, so I don't care how much I hurt someone. And it's just all out war.
Did
And it is really
did
unfortunate that things happen that way. And I think at that time, I have a lot of friends then taking screenshots of what other school board members are posting. I'm getting text messages like crazy from people, things that I would not have seen because I'm not necessarily, Facebook friends with all these people. I do have friends of friends who are screenshotting things and sending them to me. So there are things happening that I would generally not even have been aware of because it's on maybe a closed Facebook page. But because friends of friends are screenshotting and sending it to me, I'm now hyper aware. And it's also
yeah.
very hard to get away from it because you want to be able just to like turn off your social media and just walk away. I'm just going to like take a few days off and hang out with my friends and my family and have good times and heal. And you don't even get that space to heal because the people who actually do think that they're doing the best for you, saying like, hey, there are people watching where you're going. See, like, here's a screenshot. This guy, he knows when you leave your house. He knows when you drive. He's watching your
Yeah.
business. And I'm like, oh,
If
it
you're if
feels like
you're
all of the time encapsulated. Is that how you
if
felt
you're
too?
yeah, I kind of talked about how I felt, so I don't think it really matters too much. But yeah, I felt like I had to watch my screen all the time, at least for like a day or two. And then it kind of wore off. But going back to that stalking part, if you're watching on YouTube, you're gonna see the screenshot of it. And actually, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from, watch a YouTube video. So we're gonna show a lot of screenshots of who's saying what, what's saying what, and so forth. So you'll see a lot of stuff on the YouTube version of this. But that, how'd you feel when you found out someone's watching you at 2 a.m. in the morning?
Like making crazy posts all the time of the day, or even saying like nasty things about my kids. Like, clearly when I agreed to run, they weren't expecting people to be being nasty to them online. And you just drag everyone into it.
But
And clearly it's
but when you saw people posting your whereabouts, how did that make you feel? Did you feel
Well,
safe?
one, my husband told me that I really shouldn't be going out anymore without somebody else, which was probably the most concerning thing. It's like, oh gosh, now there's more rules for me. Like I ran in order to fight for more freedom for people and better conversations, and now I can't even go out without having people along with me. That it felt very confining, and it's very anybody that's been through it and anybody even listening to this can imagine that it's very scary. However, you know it's really hard to go out and have somebody with you,
Uh,
so I didn't necessarily
well,
follow that
uh,
rule.
the title of this podcast is called "We're Watching You," and it's an
Yeah,
inside joke that I have with me and you, which some people get offended by on Facebook when I post that saying, because I've seen
we're
it
watching
so
you.
many times where people are tracking. They'll post. If you're watching YouTube, you saw the post go by already. They're posting the times where you're at. They'll let people know. Okay, Elizabeth Hankey's at her business now. She left her business already. She drives this car. I mean, so I find that as a joke, because what I'm trying to do is take that negative, turn into a positive, and it's like, okay, are you watching you do this now? Are you watching doing that, or you just watch? So that's where this whole thing
Yeah.
started from. Is
Yeah, instead of,
the
like,
"we're watching
watching me in
you"
a threatening
joke?
way, like, "Oh, this is where she is," we really should be watching all of our politicians and how they vote and what they say and the cause and effect nature of what's happening in our schools, and, of course, in the way
But they were
you joke
literally
about
watching you, though. They
when I
were literally
post
going.
something. Yeah, it's
But
like,
they
"Are
were
you watching
literally
her now?"
they're literally but they were literally watching you,
Watching
having to
me.
post on social media where you're at, what you drive. When you
Yeah,
have I saw a comment which was deleted, which was smart of that person. This person worked for a company that called your kids trash. And I looked at her job as like, I can't believe that person would actually say that in the job she has. But that post was taken down. She must have had a second thoughts, which, that, which is
good, you
good,
should.
which is good because
You
she felt
should,
some
but the
remorse on
fact
it.
that you had a first thought to do that is also problematic. Like, I don't think to I mean, these are children. Like, why would you go after kids? Come on. I don't know, we've lost our minds.
How
But,
how did it
you
make
know
you feel? Well, hold on. How did it make it feel when you saw like trusted people of the community jumping on board, calling you a racist? You even had a representative who didn't get
yeah, that I
reelected.
currently serve with on the school board, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had that.
yeah.
You
Sharing
had
it, saying, "I
representatives.
told you so."
You had representatives though of not
Uh-huh.
even in our district
Yeah.
jumping in, calling
State
you racist.
representatives, yep, jumping in and jumping on, people you don't know, and
How did that make you
that's the
feel? Yeah.
hardest thing, right? Is, like, you have people calling you trash, you have people who are on boards of different committees, on the school board, state representatives, making comments about constituents, At that time, I wasn't elected yet. So you have, as you've mentioned, a power dynamic difference. They have a larger platform than I am sharing this stuff. And then also just, yeah, it makes you feel like you're out
And,
of your mind.
you know
But and I think more than that too, right? I mean, it's supposed to not just make me afraid. It's supposed to make everybody who is seeing it afraid,
yeah.
right? So I can't look afraid because I don't want other people to buy into this. Um, I'm a real big fan of, and I'm not sure if you read her stuff, but Barry Wise, and
I'll read it.
something that she says is that courage is more contagious than fear. And so it's very hard to be courageous, but I think you have to even when you are fearful, you have to put a courageous face on so that other people who are experiencing this don't feel like they have
So,
anything to fear.
during this time of getting 'cause I think it lasted for, like, a weekend. To be honest with you, it sounds like it lasted looking back, it felt like this was going on forever. I mean, there are some residual stuff here and there, but literally it lasted for, like, 3 or 4 days. It wasn't that long. But during that short period of time, I know, like, did you stay off your phone? Like, how'd you deal with knowing that you're being attacked online?
So,
Like,
I did try to stay off social media, but like I had said, like people who know me, friends of friends, like people
they
that
keep showing it to
that
you.
knew me a decade or 15 years ago and have my phone number, like, did
So,
you see this? Like, we want you
would you
to be
say
safe. You needed to be aware of this. I'm like, I
would you
don't
say
want to
that
know.
was would you
I
that did
mean, I
more
think in the
harm?
long run, it is helpful. In the long run, it's helpful to know who are the players in the game, what's going on in the background. A lot of times when I'm out canvassing, I will have people speak openly to me, and then you know come and find me later. They're driving around the communities trying to see whose door I'm at now, seeing if they can talk to me again. And they express that they're fearful. And so it helps answer some of those questions about why people are fearful, right? And so unless it happens to you, you kind of don't understand. But when you get this sincere response from somebody, and then 30 minutes later, they're like, oh, by the way, I realize that you have an app and you probably know my name and clearly you know where I live. Please make sure that if you mention this incident to anybody, that you don't use my name. Like they have this real fear. And you kind of wonder, where is this fear coming from? And now I know.
Yeah.
It comes from the mobs. But also something I want people to realize is that even though, people were smearing my business or saying that they're going to come for me, nothing actually happened. My business ended up as busy as it usually is.
It
Nothing
was a
really
scare
changed there.
tactic. It was a scare tactic to keep you afraid that and it didn't work.
And
You weren't only being attacked for that fake post. 'Cause if you see that post, you can tell it's Photoshop because Facebook comments have gray backgrounds in it, and they clearly made it as a Facebook post, not a Facebook comment. Either way, horrible art skills. I did a better job. Like, I showed you how to do a reel, how to really Photoshop a Facebook comment. We had fun personally back and forth with
I
that one,
know
but
you were sending me positive stuff, like all the people who were hating me and calling me and my kids names. You were
yeah,
like,
but
"We sponsor
there
Elizabeth
was
Hankey."
there
It's
was
just like an
also
uplifting.
there was also a narrative where they're making you sound like you were being funded by out of state organizations. It's funny how fast that story died down once your final financial report comes out, but the fact that they would lie and make stuff up,
And again, it
how'd you
comes down
handle
to the
that?
the newspaper made an article about how my business was funding my campaign, and in Minnesota, on your campaign reports, you have to list who you work for.
Yeah.
And so I had loaned my campaign money personally, and I had listed where I worked, the business I own, because that's where I work. And I don't know if it was a mistake of like they just can't read a campaign report or if it is malicious, but they're like, oh, her business is funding candidates.
But
And I'm
that's
like,
not out of
oh,
state,
you've
though. That's
got
not
to
out of
be
state.
kidding. Like,
there was
we can't do checks and balances here, we can't get our stories straight, so, again, it it comes down to, like, oh, the normal public and the hoopla that we hear, but when we have elected officials, when we have business professionals, running with
you
these
had
narratives,
yeah, you had
you
elected
you're
officials
not prepared.
running with that narrative. You had even the day I think the day before election, one of the elected officials, he actually referred to a politician on his Facebook page. He even said, "Look who's funding Elizabeth Hankey now." And we read the article, it's like the article was misleading because they didn't talk about who was funding you. You weren't being
Yeah,
funded by no out of state. Like they had these weird ideas, like there must have been some huge political power outside of Minnesota that was giving you large sums of money to get you elected. They
I
did that
know,
for
right?
you. They're saying kids would commit suicide and increase bullying if I got elected. I mean, they were just going nuts with these weird
I know.
narratives that I couldn't even think about.
And you just
Why
think
how
like,
did they make this
wow,
stuff
if
up?
we could all work together on doing something good. And, I'm a mentor, and I made a comment once like, hey, if everybody was like putting this much effort into letting people know that we have one of the largest lists at our in our mentor program of mentees needing mentors of in their history, if we were putting that same effort to say we need more mentorship and mentors to do these and help these kids, you know and that went viral. If that went viral, our community would be better off, but instead,
Yeah.
just live in fear of each other,
You know,
it would just be it's just, it's hard.
a few things that a lot of people don't know. First of all, there was speculation about that video being taken down that that lady posted, and they blamed this person, that person. When in reality, dude, I saw my friend being attacked online. I reported that video to Facebook to get it taken down. The best thing about being Facebook Meta verified is you get somebody on the phone within 5 minutes. That's why I'm verified on Facebook because if I have Facebook issues, I can call somebody. I had that pulled down. There wasn't no big, you know, American Experiment secret people pulling down that lady stuff. No, that was me. I just reported it and talked to somebody and say, hey, this ain't true. Um, Second thing was I asked somebody on the board why I was kind of targeted with these attacks as well. And they said, well, Tim, it's because you're friends with Elizabeth Hankey. And I was like, wow. So if I am friends with somebody that you disagree with, that's why I'm being attacked as well. Because I like anyone who is my friends. So going back a few years when COVID was happening, my business was like weeks away from shutting down because we didn't know how long this COVID was going to last. I reached out to Jim Hagedorn, every state person I could think of, Jack Considine. He called me. I reached out to everybody, and Jim Hagedorn was like, "Well, we're all doing this. Go apply for a PPP loan." I was just, thanks, man. That really helps me out. Now, Jim Hagedorn's a Republican, so I reached out to Nick Friends, and I think Jack Considine actually called me up. And time Jack called me up, I said I was already dealing with Nick Friends. Nick Friends, who's a senator in our area, he's a Democrat. He was the only person that cared about how I was feeling, cared about my business. When the second shutdowns happened in our business, I was the only school in this community that was allowed to stay open because I knew he was a lawyer in town. I looked at the governor's um, whatever, saying that these businesses can't be open unless you're this. I went to Nick France and said, "Hey, Nick, I am this. Can you help me prove this?" He goes, "Yeah, do this, this, and CC me." Like Nick went for bat for me and my business. I don't care what political party this person's is. I don't have to agree with everything that someone does. But the fact that somebody like Nick cared for me, he's watching for my business. I'm loyal to you, unless you do something otherwise. But it's like I know a lot of our friends may disagree with his politics, which is fine, but I still know at least he was a guy that called me up and said, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do. I want you to do this." He gave me actual steps to take. Where the other guy told me, "Let's go apply for a loan," which I was just like, "Yeah, thanks, dude. That's all I want. More debt." As small business owners, all we want is more debt to have because we, that's what we want. Um, I think people need to look at character and not about what issue or what party you think you are. Because in school board, there is no right or left. I may be friends with you. Does it mean I agree with everything you say or do? No. But I like to have friends with different opinions and different thoughts. That's how we are diverse.
Yeah,
That's how
and
we
I
can
would
have true
say
diversity.
on that note too, as far as like who you're allowed to speak with, I mean, that's a form of bullying, right? Like we have a selected list of people that you could speak with in order to be part of our group. But there's this guy named Daryl Davis is his name, and he's a black man, and he actually is a musician. And when he was playing music, he had and in his audience, a KKK member at the time, many years ago, become friends with him. And so through his music, and this KKK member, he had gone up and said, "Hey, can I attend one of your meetings?" And he's like, "Well, that might be a little awkward, but sure," and invited him in. And he attended these KKK meetings for a very long time and started establishing relationships with the member were the members, and then of course went to new groups and talked to more people, and he ended up getting hundreds and maybe even thousands of KKK members to hang up their robes. And I think through this experience, I mean, and even hearing about his story without having experienced anything, you could imagine how hard it is to ask to be invited into a space where most people are going to dislike you and maybe
Yeah.
even hate you and maybe even want to hurt you. And, he came from the perspective of like, I want to know why. I don't think that people are born innately bad, but clearly this ideology they have is not good. And why do they harbor these feelings? And going into this situation with an open mind of like, I want to build relationships with people that dislike me.
That's the power.
How many of us do that? Not many of us, which is what makes him great.
Yeah.
And so it kind of goes back to the fact that if he had a mindset of like, I can't talk to these people, that hate would have festered and
Yep.
grown. And because of his willingness to talk to people that don't necessarily like him, you know, he just grew his circle, grew love. He
I
walked some
love
of
it.
their children down the aisle when they got
Yeah.
married. It's just knowing people, knowing stories like that. I've been to Zoom meetings with him. Um, Knowing stories like that makes all of this worth it
That's the
because
power of conversation and actually listening. I want to just pause you right there. So, I don't know if I told you the story, but I spoke to a group of business leaders in our town, and I showed them the side that the free press wouldn't talk about. I showed them like, hey, when I ran for school board, I did not know. Here's a comment. So what I did, I took comments off that lady's post, and I could back everything up. So here's what was being said. So this says me and you were friends for years, going to school board meetings. This is the actual email and date where she met me for the very first time, asked me to run for school board, which was like, that time, like 7 months before the election. And then I posted, here's a post where Republicans are upset because all my signs are in Democrat yards. And then here's a post where the Democrats are upset because my sign are in their yards. So I had people sending me stuff because they didn't know which party I was on. I
whose
had
side are you on? Whose side are you
I
on? I am
I
on the
had a
side of
lady.
students.
So if you're watching on YouTube again, I'll show you this one picture here right now. This was a lady that knows me and my family for years. It was Dan Crones. I can say that because he's an active leader in this Democrat area. He went up to a lady's house saying, "Hey, you can't have Tim Flynn sign there because he's considered a Republican." She's pretty much told him to go to hell. I won't have anyone sign up there as not whoever sign up there, whoever I believe in. So I had both parties that were upset at me because I was in everybody's yard, and then so I was like, because I remember you sent me that. Yeah, you got some people mad at you because you're in this yard. So I mean, I was getting it on both sides. So what I did though is I show these leaders in the community that we're in, like, here's my conversations with Senator Nick Frentz about running for school board, how to get into the DFL office, because my business is next to the Republican office at that time. My business was next door to the Republican office, and they saw my school board sign. They walked down and said, "Hey, if you want to put your signs or your stuff in our offices, we'll let you do that." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, here's my stuff." So then I text Nick Frentz like, "Hey, the Republicans are letting me do this. Can I do this as well?" And he goes, "Yeah, here's the offices. This is where you go. Go put your stuff in their offices as well." So actually, I had both of my stuff in both offices, but they wouldn't. The Free Press will never tell you that because they don't. That's not their narrative at that time.
Everyone
But
needs a narrative to sell a story.
I was able to explain the whole thing with my side, and luckily, I take a lot of screenshots as well as they take screenshots. But which was good because actually, I had people who unfriended me during that time come back and friend me back again, just because like, oh, well, we didn't know that was happening. I go, "Of course you did, because 1, you didn't talk to me, and 2, you just assumed whatever the paper is saying, that's what's true." And so I actually was able to bring back relationships back in again. But that's the power of conversation and listening when you can hear both sides. And what helped me out is I actually had, I had conversations with Nick. I had conversations with people long before October, So I had this all built up way before that short period of time of the elections.
And I think that
So
is the benefit of running for something. I mean, of course, the negative is that you're going to probably get social media fake hate in the fake world, but you get to have an opportunity to meet some remarkable people as well. And, when we were running, we get all these emails from NPR, local news organizations to fill out for surveys they'll put out to their consumers. And one of the emails I received was, and that you received too, but you didn't fill yours out, was from a group called Good Party. And so I filled out my form with them. They contacted me and said, yeah, we'll go ahead and work with you. Their platform would. And so my campaign manager was actually in Florida. And so we have somebody from the southernmost state working with somebody from the northernmost state. I would say that generally speaking, well, one, I was part of the Libertarian Party for a while. So I'm small government libertarian. And also why I believe in serving local community is because I believe strongly in the power of local governance and keeping things as local as possible, because elected leaders locally are going to be more responsive to their community than state and federal.
yeah.
And so, but I would say, if I was in a moderate scale, I'd probably be towards the conservative part of that moderate scale, whereas my campaign manager had never voted Republican. So he was on the more liberal side of that moderate scale, but he didn't know if he was even going to vote in the same election that I was running in because, he had felt that politics had become so divided, which is why
Mhm.
Good Party was formed, right? Is that you just can't have Republican or Democrat money behind you. They want money, big campaign money out of politics in order to get local candidates or state. There are state candidates running for them. I think they've got currently a governor in Iowa running. They have a mayor of Detroit running as independents. So they do have, but they want to get the money out so that people are listening to their community and not big money. And
I'm
that's
surprised you filled that out because when you sign up for an election, people probably don't know this. When you sign up for an election, once the day that all the people that you can apply to run, once that day closes the next day, your email box gets hit with tons of surveys. And I think I filled out a good chunk of all the surveys. One was Minnesota Parents Alliance. I only remember them because they're the only ones that actually accepted my survey. And there's a bunch of others. And you don't have say whether they're going to use it or not. If you don't want, this time I was still, I'm new to this stuff. I don't know, I filled it all out and I didn't know what was going to happen with the information. I didn't know that they were going to put you on their Facebook page and people may not like that. And so people would say, because I did these surveys and somebody picked it up, that I'm part of non educational political parties, which are like, dude, I filled out a survey. Like I filled out 20 of them that came that day, not knowing who was going to take it. But that's why I didn't fill out good party surveys because at that time I don't know if that came out
You were
right away, but
surveyed out.
I was done. I'm like, I have to run a business still. I can't sit here and answer the same questions
Oh,
over and
I
over
try to fill
again.
out every single one of my surveys, even
That is
though it was
just too
super time
much.
consuming, but I also love to write. So I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah,
more
not me.
opportunities to write." So, yeah, for working with my campaign manager, again, I've got older, almost graduating kids. He's got younger, not even in school yet type of kids. And northernmost state, southernmost state, I lean slightly conservative in a very liberal area. He leans slightly liberal in a very conservative area. And so working together on which issues are important, why. Why our issues are important, how we solve these issues. It was such a humbling experience just to know that you could work with somebody different than you on a common goal. And
Yeah.
then also when it really came down and all this stuff is coming at me, for him to go through it with along with me. And even though he didn't know me, and I'm doing this exit interview with Good Party of what's gone right, what could go better, and I just took a moment and
Yeah.
stopped, try not to tear up because
So
just the humanity he offered, and he said, "You know what, Beth, you don't deserve this." And even talking to you, it becomes
was
hard
that
because
was that the moment when you realized, like, because you went out canvassing like a week and a half later, you went back out to the public after they tried so hard to get you to stop and get you to hide. You were back out in the public again canvassing. Was that all because of Good Party?
I would say there was a lot of people that it was because of, and Good Party is one of them. I think I also listen to and read a lot of nuanced thinkers between Coleman Hughes and Barry Wise and Daryl Davis and people that have faced significant changes. And even though these are just people I listen to in podcasts and not people I actually know, and maybe I have an opportunity to attend a Zoom meeting with them, but it's not like we're one on one or we're friends calling each other or anything like that. But just knowing that there are other people out there that have gone through the same thing and they've come through the other side just fine. And there's this another quote I'm going to give you that I think you'll like. It's that confronting bullies and challenges takes courage, and courage has its own costs. But letting them define you comes with a greater cost. So it was also not letting that moment define me. So having
Okay.
Good Party, I have a friend, Toby, who's part of the Libertarian Party too, and I couldn't be like this at all. He's like, let them hate you. Their hate will sell. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? No, that's not helping
I
me.
did.
Your courage is too much. I'm not courageous like that.
You
Having
know,
you and other
yeah.
people. And then really how I got through it is I actually have a friend that canvasses for and sells door to door for a living. And he's like, I'll help you out.
That's awesome.
People out there, I'm still here and people still love you. Come out with me.
Yeah.
We can do this together. And you're right, like, as soon as he took me out, it was just fine, like, nothing happened. People still had
And
questions and
yeah.
concerns and were happy to share those with me, and
And
that
at the end of the day, all that publicity you got the last 2 weeks of the election, you turned out the winner. You won the dang election because they made one mistake, which if you know, I don't know a lot about politics, but I was told, I think I was told about this early on. Which is why I started campaigning early on, is you gotta get your name out there. People need to recognize your name because when they go to the polls, they remember, "Oh, I heard that name." They're not gonna know why they know that name. They heard that name. That's why I started out so early, so I wanted my name out there. But your name got pushed out there
a
so
lot.
heavy in that last 2 weeks that you took out a candidate who on paper should have beat you. Should have, well, I mean, I got beat by them anyways, but you should have been taken out on paper. They should have won, which I want to say I respect our candidate who came beneath you because I've had a conversation with her and she's a lovely person, very great. But you even beat her. So it just goes to tell you that you went through all this negative, but you still got the positive out of it because these people without thinking straight, because sometimes when you're bullying people, you don't think the most obvious things. Like, wait a minute, I'm actually helping this person win. I'm getting her
My
name
name
out
is out
there.
everywhere.
Not
Uh,
everybody knows you're a group of 100 people. Just FYI, we live in a town of ISD. How big is our school district? Because we have multiple. We have Mankato, North Mankato, Eagle Lake. We have Madison Lake. Not everybody knows who you 100 people are in this community that are loud, and they just threw your name out there everywhere. And it's
right,
like,
right.
dang, you
Yeah,
won.
and I still get people today like, "Oh, you look so familiar. Where do I know you from?" And
They
I
don't
have
remember it.
lived in
Yeah.
this community for 20 years, so I'm like, "Oh, is it when I worked for this big corporation or I was on planning and zoning? I was president of my neighborhood association. Do you know me because I've donated to your organization before? Or do you know me from my political run?" Like, I don't know. And do I mention my political run? I don't even know. But no, my name definitely got out there, and you feel like everybody knows you, but that's not necessarily the case either. Because
Yeah.
plenty of times still to this day where I'm like, oh, this person's like looking at me weird. Most people are not paying attention to school
No.
board. So even though it feels like that, or my name might have some recognition, they don't. A friend, and I'm gonna pull it up right now if I can, had shared, oh, and it's gonna refresh, of course. Oh, here we go. He had just shared a Martin Luther King quote. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And I think that's profound because it's true, but it's also hard
Mhm.
because clearly when you've been attacked, you feel like you need to attack back or like protect yourself, whether you need to protect yourself or not. But how you win friends and influence is by being friendly and open, or like you said, like if I'm acting like scared and people don't know what's happening in the background, they're just thinking that I'm strange, or if they don't know that I've been attacked before, and or by who, or like you said, it could be somebody else that I'm working with who has attacked me in the past, and I have a lot of um, reservations about working or trusting them again. But if there's other people in the group, they may not know that whole story, and then I look like the bad guy, you know.
What's
And
what's
so learning to trust again is, of
okay?
course, it's hard, and it's hard for a reason, right? Because by nature we want to protect ourselves so we don't have to go through it again. There's good reason for that. But also, in order to build relationships and build bridges, you also have to learn. And so it's an ongoing process. And then too, I know it's something that we've both, and I think anybody in our positions struggles with, is that when we were being attacked, I was always getting a ton of text messages and, people sending me Bible verses and I'm thinking of you. But there are very few people that were publicly standing for me. And so sometimes it does feel like, even though I was absolutely not alone, it can feel lonely. And then also, because as I mentioned to you before, too, I don't want other people to see this and get scared. So you have to act brave, even though you might not feel brave. And that's a very lonely feeling. One of my neighbors, who happens to be a Democrat, was maybe the most vocal, and he had to be because it was the Democrats' side that was attacking me the most. And so also seeing people like that, like people that we weren't great friends, we've worked together on things before, who stood up, whereas maybe like really close friends, even though they were sending me messages, they wouldn't be willing to stand up publicly. And then also, for me personally, my kids are almost done with school. I've been at this for 20 years, fighting for my kids' good education. And I do feel like there are days I feel exhausted. I want to be done. My kids, they got their public school education. They studied abroad as well. A lot of them went PSEO to university before graduating high school. And, I fought hard so that they could have a diverse cultural experience with lots of people from all over the world. And there are days that I feel done. Like, I
Yeah.
am done. I
What's the
got what I wanted for my children, you know, and it, a lot of people didn't weren't there fighting for me and my kids when we needed them, and
Yeah,
so it becomes you can get inside your own head, like, "Well, if there was nobody for me, why should I be there for other people?"
yeah,
But then I take a step back, and maybe I play something by Coleman Hughes or Barry Wise or Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm like, "You know what? If they did this" again, Dr. King, he
yeah,
gave his life. He sacrificed so much time with his own family in order to stand with his community. So even when he was alive, he was sacrificing a lot. Like it's a lot easier to hang around people that give you joy, to hang around your family who pour into you than to hang out with people that maybe draw your energy.
yeah.
Um,
You just change
but
your
for the future
environment.
of humanity, you have to make those
Yeah,
choices.
yeah, and what you did, you just changed your environment. You decided to stay with positivity to kinda
Yeah,
keep you going
well,
through
you
that.
you do try, and I don't always succeed. I fail at that too. I do think um, that you have to have grace for yourself and for others, and know other people have bad days as well. And some of those people that were sharing all this hate, you and I try to get to know their history, like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
One
and
thing
some of
I
them
do
come
wanna
from very difficult
Yeah,
backgrounds, right? So,
yeah,
not to say that's an excuse. You have no excuse to treat people, to try to track them down and try to get other people, influence other people to do bad things to them, call little kids names. No excuse.
yeah,
However, we also can step back and have empathy for maybe what people have gone through and experience themselves. So you can have that dichotomy happening, where you can be angry and upset of what
yeah.
someone's doing to you and also have that empathy for them as well and have grace. And again, going to that Martin Luther King quote, it's like being able, if somebody really wants forgiveness, to be able to build those bridges that lead to that forgiveness, because we all do things that we regret, and we would want forgiveness for
You mean
other.
you're not perfect? You're not perfect?
I know,
Dude, I
right?
only hang out with perfect friends. I don't know if you knew
Yeah,
that. I only hang out with perfect
clearly.
people. Oh my gosh. I wanna
Yeah.
ask you a question though. What what was a positive for you during that experience of being attacked, saying you're racist? You had community leaders calling you racist. I mean, you had everybody on a platform take a
Everybody.
platform to you, calling you names. What was a positive?
Um,
Besides
e eg
winning, that's a given. What's the positive for you
um,
personally?
it is an enormous learning experience, and I'm so thankful and grateful for the experience, and education I got from all of this. You know, there's always and I'm gonna this is coming from somebody else, these aren't my quotes. But there's always going to be a world full of people that, don't wanna see you succeed and are going to threaten you into silence, and you just can't let them.
Mhm.
You don't want to let them win, and there are worse things than being hated. One of them is to be afraid, to speak your truth, and, being ashamed of speaking your truth. I mean, when I started on my journey, which wasn't to the intention of running for public office, but the journey of just advocating for students' education, for belonging, making sure that we're not being divided by, these artificial, you know, boxing of people by, again, things that they can't
Yeah.
control: hair
That's a
color,
you
skin
know,
color,
I
eye
I
color,
felt bad
sexuality,
during
whatever. I just don't want the boxing of people. I knew that this was going to be a hill I was willing to die on,
I
because
felt
I
bad
just
for
believe
you.
that strongly for the rest of society. We can't have a society that builds things if we're dividing people.
Yeah, I felt bad for you when you were during that time because for a minute, I kinda, like, pushed you, talked you into running for school board. I remember sending you that text message like, "Elizabeth, I'm so sorry if I knew this was gonna happen, I would have told you not to run." But are you glad you ran?
Yeah, I am absolutely glad I ran. I mean, number one, you and I have become friends. I don't stay in touch with my campaign manager as much with Good Party, but I do stay in touch with Good Party. And they're still around, they're still building candidates, letting them know that, hey, people can say bad things to your candidates, but in reality, I hear from a lot of people that it doesn't really affect their business. And, I listened to a podcast with somebody who owns a comedy club. And, people are going after his family and his business as well for letting comedians perform. So it wasn't even something he said. It was, again, kind of
A
like what
stupid
happened to
thing.
you. You're wrong for being friends with these people. And he said, but at the end of the day, my club's doing better than ever. So just going back to the point that, hey, not to say there aren't people that don't suffer, whose businesses don't go under because they face this pressure. But there are plenty of people who experience all this and nothing negative happens to their families
Yeah,
and their businesses.
yeah,
And so not to let that stop them from running. And that's kind of the point of why some people do this, right? There are people who do feel hurt, who don't your message isn't getting across to them in the way that you intended, and they're angry and upset. And then there are malicious actors, right? There are people who are just power hungry, malicious people. Both exist. Um, but to know that they want to silence people for the sole intention of silencing people, and to not
yeah.
let them do that because standing for your community and
What
serving your community is more important.
what I found interesting, the people that were attacking me, these people, there was a connection there to me in a way, to my business, which I thought that was strange. These people all belong to this business, which actually, like, you know what? It's jealousy. It's fine. But you know what? At the end of the day, I I forgive these people because these people gave me an experience that now I can use content. I got great content to use for my podcast. I can educate people now. I actually it proves my theory that people who bully are often having their own struggles and that they just needed someone to pick on that day and you just happen to be in front of it. Because the people who are targeting you, me, we look back at their history and I feel bad for these people. I don't wish none of that on anybody. And I would openly have a conversation with any one of those people
Yeah.
and be
Yeah,
friends with them.
and I
I'll
think,
be friends with anybody
we've
who wants to be friends
offered.
with me. Yeah,
We've offered. Sometimes when they come after us on social media, like, "Well, if you'd like to have this conversation off of social media, here's my phone number. I am
yeah.
happy to meet you at a coffee shop, have this conversation," and very, very few take you up on that offer, but
And that's on
yeah,
them. That's on them. I mean, you
yeah,
can't force
and
someone to have a conversation with you, which is fine.
yeah, and, it's just the experience of finding when you stand for something, when you run, and when you put yourself out there, and when you stick with it and you don't back down, you get to end up meeting a lot of people with those similar qualities, or people who are willing to stand up for their community and fight for what they believe. And so your circle becomes bigger in that way too.
Going to fast, we're going to change topics a bit now because now you are a active member of my local school board. And since this is an anti-bullying podcast, I want to talk about bullying policies procedures because it's one thing that I wanted to do was help change that. What are you doing right now? What do parents need to know if their child is being faced with bullying in their schools? How can parents support their
Yeah.
child and maybe help the school resolve this issue?
Yeah, so in most states and in the state of Minnesota, we have Title VI and Title IX policies, and we do have anti-bullying type policies as well. And most of those actually come um, either mandated or heavily suggested from the state. So if you have a student who is facing online pressures from other students, or in school are facing pressures, threats of violence, there are typically, and I would bet that your school has policies to deal with these things. And it's so important because I don't think most people think, oh, this is happening, I just want to call my teacher and have it taken care of. I don't think many people think to, like, oh, let's go to the school's website, look through their policies, find the policy that deals with bullying. But taking those steps is incredibly important. And most of these policies are going to say, try to work with your teacher first. And if that doesn't work, uh, advocate to your principal. In Mankato, there is actually a form you can fill out and submit. And I always suggest, that if you've dealt with a teacher and that hasn't stopped the threatening or bullying type of behavior, then to go ahead and fill out that form, because documentation is so important. So have those phone conversations and those personal one-on-one experiences, because things can absolutely get misinterpreted through emails. But then to make sure you are also doing that form and submitting it, so that way the state or the school or somebody doing a data request can start seeing a pattern. Because one thing I hear a lot of times is just like, oh, teachers are dealing with a lot. Clearly, they don't want to have behaviors in their room. A lot of times, teachers would like to see parents push back on, um, the threats or disruptions happening in classrooms, that the teachers really would like to get these things under control, but we can't get them under control unless people are willing to take the time. And it is time, because it is time to talk to the teacher, try to work through it, go to the next step, try to work through it, submit the form, try to work through it, potentially, go to your cabinet members or your school board, try to work through it. And still, if you haven't worked through it, you might have to go ahead and contact the state. That's part of the process. We're going to take all this documentation that you have made and created by advocating for your child within your school, and we're going to turn it into the state. And then the state might look at it and say, hey, I do see things that the district was doing that could use some improvement. So now, it takes a lot of time. And a lot of people will just, especially if you have money and other resources, will just wash their hands of it and be like, I can't. I work a full
Mhm.
time job. My kids are stressed out. I'm just going to
So
leave.
if a parent has a phone conversation with a teacher at school, they should also follow up with them by email saying, per this conversation we had, 'cause that's how you document. You have to
That's
document
how
your
you
phone
document.
conversation.
Yep. And, or say, "Hey, my child came home and had this story about this disruption in school. Can you clarify how this happened?" And this could be one-on-one after school or before school the next day, but follow up with that email. And one, you just don't want to get any, you know, paths crossed, to make sure that you're both understanding it the same. But my full belief is that a lot of the teachers, even though they might not tell you to follow that process, but they want the documentation as well, because sometimes our policies, either because of what the state would recommend schools to do or because the policies schools have created, aren't necessarily going to best maybe support the teachers. And the teachers would like to have that support. And they might not be encouraged themselves to advocate for safety in their classrooms. Um, but I can't imagine, there's not many teachers that don't want well-behaved children who are paying attention all the time. So just, even though it may not feel like the teachers want you to be documenting, to make sure that you're coming across in the way that it's not the teacher's fault. In some cases it might be, but most of the times it's not. A lot of times they have a lot of kids in a classroom, they're understaffed, they might not be feeling well, just to make sure that you're coming across in a way like, how can I help you in advocating for our students in a way that makes your classrooms safer.
Okay.
And so that we're not blaming, but we are
Yeah.
documenting. We are following up with that conversation. Hey, this is what I heard happened. It was at this date. Contact. And also, I hear from a handful of parents, my kid has been threatened. If your child's life is being threatened, definitely go ahead and call the teacher. Make sure that you're getting an accurate story, but call the police. If somebody were to come into my business, if somebody was going to came into your business, and you saw a child being threatened, regardless of who was doing the threatening, I am not going to get in the middle of that. I'm going to call the police and be like, here's my location. This is what I'm seeing, whether it's my business or not. I'm going to make that report. And those parents should, if there's something that illegal has occurred, you should report that to the police. And you should follow up with your district and let them know that you made the report. But if something illegal has occurred, if the harassment has got to the level of I'm coming for you, or they're threatening your life, or it has jumped the realm of something that the district can handle, absolutely report that to police. Not only that, and at least here in the state of Minnesota, and I'm not sure how it is in other states, but if you make a police report from your house, but it occurred on school property, that report would be made at the address. Right? So it's not like, oh, this person at this home address made this complaint. It would be like, oh, this is the incident. This is the address the incident occurred. So
Okay,
again,
so
if that
hold on, wait.
documentation,
I'm confused. Hold on. If I'm at home, I call the police. They use my home address or they use the school's address?
they would say if you reported that your child is reporting, I would assume, because you're not going to spend a whole
Yep.
lot of time at the school.
Yep. We got
If your
that.
child's reporting that an incident, a threatening incident happened at the school, like somebody came after me, whatever, the report that the police would do would have the school's address. And that's another thing I used to do is I used to pull police reports based on school addresses to see how many reports were coming into
Wow.
our police. And don't don't do it just for any, clearly people have disagreements. Don't
Needs to be
Our police are
serious.
busy. So
Yes.
don't do this frivolously, but clearly if your child's being threatened and something illegal is occurring, make the report to the appropriate authority.
When is it appropriate to come to a school board member for bullying?
I would like to see you first try to work it out with the teacher. But there's a lot of reasons, as I mentioned. Sometimes it might be a teacher that needs more training and it might be on the teacher. But a lot of times it becomes like, well, actually, we have policies that maybe don't support the teachers. I personally like people coming to me through email or phone calls, sometimes just, I can't always answer my phone, but I do try to give people a call back or text me and say, hey, I'm one of your constituents and I would really like to talk to you. I'm happy to talk to anyone. And the big thing is a lot of times people assume that school board members know what's going on, but we have three high schools, a couple big junior highs. We have a lot of grade schools, and we have around 8,000 students and, nearly 1,000 staff. So it's a big district. I absolutely do not know what's going on in every school. And for me to advocate for good policies, I need to know as much as possible. So I think the more feedback I get, the better it is. Somebody the other day was just concerned that the program transitioning from fifth grade to sixth grade has changed. I wasn't aware that it had changed. So until a parent brings those concerns to me, I'm just not aware of it. And I think people assume like, well, the school board made this change. They know this is what they want. And that being a new school board member, in the very least, I'm not aware until someone brings it to me. So bring as much to me as you can.
When a parent comes to you for a bullying issue, you say you call talk to them. What's your role after that? What do you do with that information? Do you kind of ask the parents what they want you to do, or what do you do with that information? You just kind of keep it between you and that parent, or do you talk to the teacher? Where does that
It
information
it
go?
really comes down to, number 1, what the parent is looking for. Sometimes they're just looking for someone to hear and say, "Yeah, I've been through it before," and just having that ear and that support, saying you're doing the right thing, and encouragement is all they need. A lot of times people don't know about the policies, and just encourage them and direct them to the policies. I wrote a little blog about our policies at Mankato Area Public Schools, just because if you look at like our Title IX policy, it's close to 20 pages. And for most parents to read and go through 20-page document is daunting. And it's not like, oh, you're having fun reading a 20-page
What's
short
the
little
Title IX
novel. It's like
policy?
legal language. It's not
What is
fun.
Title IX? What is Title
I
IX?
So we have like the Title IX and Title VI are going to be race-based discrimination, sexual
Okay.
harassment. even our bullying policy is 5 pages long. And at the very end of the bullying policy is a form you can fill out and submit, which again, documentation, documentation, documentation. And I wasn't even really aware of this policy until you mentioned it. And the parent who came to me with concerns had already, and I don't know if it was from you or just because she knew to go through the policies, already had that bullying form. So she was already on top of it, filling forms out and going through steps. But just taking for me, I try to take our legal documents and condense them into step by step procedure that are a little bit easier to follow. And I know some people will go and say, yeah, you condensed 5 pages down to 1 page. This is still confusing. And just legally, there's only so much condensing that I can do. Like, I'm just trying to make it as clear and as sequential as possible, but I still have to put some verbiage in there that may
Well,
not be very clear to everyone just because I don't want to interpret things too much on my own. I want to make sure that I'm sticking with the language of the document.
if you get a lot of bullying complaints, do you talk to the other board members, say, "Hey, maybe we should do this. I'm hearing a lot of this." Do you guys try to get together and say, "Hey, maybe we should just maybe fix this policy or change it, make it clearer or simpler?" Or does it legally have to be worded a certain way?
So, as far as like advocating for change, that's really difficult. And again, it does start with documentation because I will hear from other school board members all the time, like, we'd be happy to change policy if we see this as a problem. And sometimes I'd hear from teachers like, yeah, I fill out an incident report, mentioning that an incident happens in my classroom, but I don't get any follow up. So I don't know if maybe it just isn't received or if it disappears. And, there's a lot of things going on. Maybe the teacher doesn't even have time because they have 1,000 other things going on to fill out the forms. So getting accurate information is incredibly important. So if the teachers are like, well, maybe this will, if I'm filling out a lot of these reports, it reflects badly on me, or I don't have time, or I filled it out and now I don't know where it went to. Um, then I don't get accurate information. So again, if you have an incident, to fill out those bullying reports, to make those emails, to have those markers. And it's still, even then, hard for that information to get back to me because a lot of times I would have to, on my own, do a data request. So that's another thing is sometimes you're like, oh, our school board members know. Sometimes I'm not, even as a school board member, there's PLC forms being mentioned. And as a new member, well, I've already done data requests for it, but I don't necessarily have that information. So even if you fill out the forms, I might have to go to the extra step of doing a data
Yeah.
request to request those forms for the school in order to get information. But at least the information exists. So
Yeah.
making sure you're following procedures for the documentation so that way if other school board members say, hey, I don't think this is an issue, I can say, well, clearly it is because people are following the process and now I have good documentation as to why a problem exists. So document, document, document so I can prove, prove, prove.
Okay.
But it is difficult because there are 7 of us, right? So I have to get 4 school board members to agree that a policy needs to be changed in order to actually change the policy. And so we did have parents come to a school board meeting concerned about safety issues within a classroom. And, one of them had asked, like, well, how do I get this brought onto an agenda so I can get in a vote on it? And saying, well, the chair and vice chair, create the agendas. If you get 2 school board members to agree that it needs to be added to an agenda, we could add it to the agenda. During a meeting, you could request to have something at motion to add to an agenda. Someone could second your motion, and then we could take a vote, right? So, like knowing that process, but change is hard. And making sure that you are out there as much as possible, advocating for your kids, educating people, becoming educated yourself. You're like, okay, my kid is being bullied. Why is it that this
Yeah.
continues to happen? So
Well,
it's not easy. There's no easy answer, but just to continue advocating and being loud and willing to speak about your experiences and listen to other people's experiences as well.
I want to thank you for like a bonus episode on your episode of your cyberbullying story. I do want to say I'm so glad you won the election. I remember meeting with my publicist at that one time. She goes, "Wait, you two want to help each other?" And I'm like, "Leslie, that's like three or was it four seats?" I mean, it's like we all, you know, it's like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Reality. I remember we had conversations. One of us will. Our goal was one of us to get in, and that was the goal, and it worked. I didn't care who it had been one of us, or
It's tough in
both
there.
have been great. But I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't like losing anything. I'm very competitive, but I'm
Yeah, and
happy that you got in.
yeah, I would just
To,
like to end with the fact that, yeah, just to tell parents to continue advocating for their students, making the decisions that are best for them. Like, please try to work through our policies as best as possible. But clearly, there are people that don't have the time to continue reach out and to continue advocating, and you know, you, you have to look for whatever options are best for your kid, and just to continue working and fighting for that, and also to encourage people who haven't run for office to do so. Right, like, we were never thinking about running for office previously, and although I've lived here for 20 years, I'm not from this region. I was born in Illinois. And so that even if you're an outsider in your community, or if you've never run for um, politics before, to be encouraged to do so. And if you feel that you're a fair minded person that has nuanced ideas, and you're not going to be taking, big corporate money or outside money or political money, then to really look into Good Party. I really find just their compassion to be really helpful. And then I was mentioning to you earlier, I got to do a Zoom call with Andrew Yang, because he's the forward party, not right, not left, but forward. And although I don't necessarily agree with all of his stances, I think that he is a really interesting person and nuanced thinker. And he was a former presidential candidate. And how many people get to be on Zoom calls with the former presidential candidates, right? So meeting all those brave people, right?
that's
And
awesome.
just, yeah, having that
Yes.
solidarity and bravery and doing what you think is right.
Elizabeth, if people want to follow you, I know you do have a public page because you're a school board member. What is that page? And if they want to ask you questions about how do I work with my school to help end bullying, or just to get more information on how to stand up to, cyberbullying, where can they find you?
Cyberbullying. I'm on Facebook as Elizabeth Hankey, Mankato School Board, or Mankato. I'll have to make sure I get that off to you correct. And then I have a website, Elizabeth Hankey, yeah, also for Mankato School Board, full website. And then there's a school
There
board
you
phone
go.
number and school board email address there too. So they can feel free to reach out to me on my
Yeah.
public domains as well.
Okay. And if you're watching online, you just see her website go across the screen, and I'll post her website in the show description. Elizabeth, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun. Good luck, and we'll keep in touch.
And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. If you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. If you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. Reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.